Welcome to the Liberation Lab podcast, insights and interviews for the disruptive educator. I'm honored to have my guest on. I'm going to let her introduce herself. So why don't you tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Hi there, my name is Dr. Latania Marr y Ortega. I am originally from New Mexico, living in Kansas right now. I'm currently the English as a second English to speakers of other languages coordinator everywhere in this country. It's ESL coordinator. There's different titles.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So I also why I do this is because I feel that we need to understand our students and help our coordinators, help our directors, help our teachers understand our students and understand that education is first for our students, no matter where they come from, no matter who they are, no matter their story, and the importance of cultivating their story and who they are in order to properly educate them and help them have hope in this country.
Your work is really important in the role that you're in. In Jersey, we recently switched it to multilingual learners.
Yes.
Is what we switched the language there.
Thank you.
But I find that by and large, schools are not servicing, not supporting our multilingual learners in ways that suit them. Matter of fact, because the language is a barrier for most teachers, right? And notice my framing there. Our barrier is that we can't connect with them on with their language, and therefore, because we can only measure intelligence in that way, we kind of remove ourselves. We'll do anything to put barriers because it's safer for us because we won't tackle that hill. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Exactly. I like that New Jersey is now using multilingual learners. When I came here, well, just to give you a little background, I'm not
Please.
sure, like, but in terms of funding, 10 states still use limited English proficient when it comes to, yes, so 10 states still use that within their funding formula, within labeling students. There are 10 states that still use that. So when I came to this district, I kept on using the term emergent bilingual speaker, emergent multilingual speaker. I use that a lot, and I've changed. I'm trying to change the language because the way in which we address our students is the way in which we respect our students. So we're going to say,
Yes.
oh, they're ELs. Like, that's the word term.
Yes.
EL. Oh, he's an EL. Oh, he's learning English. And that's what we, by and large, we see a lot of these students, oh, they're learning English, instead of saying, no, we should be preserving their culture and who they are in order for them to learn English in a way that is more appropriate for them.
Yeah.
Dr. Jose Medina, if you follow his work, Dr. Jose Medina really is, he's really inspired my work of understanding linguistic liberation and what you're talking about.
Mm.
If we do not, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. If you come from Mexico, if you come from Mississippi, if you come from New Mexico, everybody has their own dialect of English, just like
Yeah.
everybody has their own dialect of Spanish. In the
Yes.
classroom, if we are not preserving and we are not respecting the language of our students, how are we going to help them grow and learn and be who they want to be and actually achieve? It's really the barrier. And yes, I know our country thinks about a barrier for our students, but it's really, like you said, I would love how you frame that. It's our barrier as teachers. It's not
Yes.
their barrier. Because you know
Yes.
what? We're the adults. We're the ones that frame the culture of the classroom. We're the ones that frame the culture of the school. It's not their
Yes.
barrier, it's our barrier. And are we going to open up the circle and let them in? Or are we just going to close the circle and say, you can't fit here? So
That part.
that's the part where I really love to talk about linguistic liberation and how are
Mm.
we, because if we separate language, we can't separate language and culture. We have,
Yes.
if you don't have, language and culture are intertwined.
Yeah.
You think about, if you're going to pull, okay, well, they got to learn English, we have to learn English, but yet you're not fostering their first language to learn English. Well, then what is the disconnect we have with our families?
Exactly right.
You know,
Yes.
Dominant culture talks about, the family unit, the family unit. Well, why are we as educators breaking down the family unit by trying to rush them to learn English, by not even thinking
Mm.
about how development of English works? So again, we
Yes.
have to think about the hypocrisy when we talk about our students and learning English and making sure that the culture and the language of our families are still intact. Because if without that, we're not developing the whole child of what we want.
It is asking our families and grading them on a scale of how quickly they can assimilate to what we want, how quickly they can become a carbon copy of what we've been socialized to believe is intelligent, acceptable, and wanted and valued. And so we ask them, come in and learn English as quickly as possible, come in and learn our cultural norms as much as possible. And
Hmm.
really, what we're saying is, how quickly can you ascribe to whiteness? How quickly
Exactly.
can you subscribe to white dominant culture? And the
Hmm.
faster you do that, the more I can see your intelligence.
And the more I can see what you know, not really taking into the fact that, photosynthesis in Spanish and Arabic and Pashto
Yeah,
and whatever language our students are blessed to speak
yeah,
is still photosynthesis in English.
yeah, yeah,
So as teachers, we are just giving them tools in another language. They already
yeah,
know all the colors in their language. They already know how to add in Spanish. They already know how to multiply.
yeah,
All we're doing, we're not giving them the knowledge. We're just giving them the language. We're just giving them the key. And until we understand that we're not giving them that knowledge, that we're not, rewind, I'm sorry. Until we respect the knowledge that our families bring, whether it be cultural in their
yeah,
home, whether it be what they learned from school, whether what they come from, then we're never going to really understand who they are, nor will we ever be able to connect what the curriculum is. So
yeah,
photosynthesis, you know, um, algebraic, Pythagorean theorem, they're all the same. It's
yeah,
just how, as teachers, it's our job to
yeah.
give them the pieces to the puzzle and break the code.
The the respect that you talk about there is so key because we have. I was just looking at a video that was just truly heartbreaking, right? Um, it was. I'm going to use the term because that's what was used in the video. There was migrant families who were bused
Oh,
to a a location that they didn't choose.
mm-mm. Yeah,
And
they didn't ask for either.
they didn't ask for it. They arrive, and a group of uh, what can only be named as a bunch of white people, because that's what it was, are there shouting and demeaning and just saying a bunch of vile things. And here's the framing that they used. We love all people. We just want to make sure that our children are safe. That was what one of the persons said. And I listened to it and I said, now they just did this, and it happens all the time in political arguments and things. They did this bait and switch thing
Mhm.
where they talked about this ideal that everybody can grasp. We want protection. Everybody wants to feel safe.
Exactly.
Safety should be a fundamental right for everyone.
Hmm.
But then they pose the other person who has done nothing as the
The
as
enemy.
the enemy to this desire. And you don't know anything about the person. The only thing that you know is that they're not from here.
But guess
And
what? Next week they'll be cleaning their tables and they'll be picking their lettuce. Just saying. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just.
no, you're good. That's exactly what I'm saying. And you look at these places like Florida, where you know whole field just left.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's tending, nobody's doing, and they're saying, or they're coming to take your jobs. And so all
Who's
of this,
those jobs?
right? It's this framing and this understanding. And here's the point that I'm trying to make is that framing and understanding doesn't stop when you get into when you get into schools.
No.
They come in with teachers, they come in with leaders, they come in with staff, they come in some
Mhm.
of our students, they come in, and so if our schools aren't working to educate, to challenge, and to
To humble.
create that sense of belonging, what are we really doing?
And I think that's the biggest part is how like the sense of belonging all the way to the basic understanding. Okay, we want to communicate, we want them to become part of this community, want them to assimilate, but yet they're not going to send a letter in Arabic, they're not going to send a letter in Spanish. They're going to
Mm,
say, oh well, they got it in the email, but they don't send a, they don't, so that's the part that I get frustrated with. We
yeah,
want them to feel like they belong, but we haven't given them a reason to belong to the community. And
yeah,
so, and another thing too, like you talked about, they're screaming all these ugly things, but yet how many of those families will go to their country and do a humanitarian effort?
Mm.
I just think about all those different things in terms of like hypocrisy, like
Yes.
and also in the next week, it's like we would not have, like, I think about New York City, I think about Washington D.C., which I traveled to this year, and the beauty of the diversity that was there, but the hard workers that were in the background, cleaning the tables, making the drinks, making the food.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I understand, but the understanding that if we want our families to belong, again, adults create the culture of the school. We
Yeah.
cannot change the children. We cannot change the neighborhoods. They are part of who the school community is. And
Yeah.
until our adults and who we are as teachers understand that, then we're never going to make the needs, we're never going to meet those goals, those hypothetical quantitative goals that they want
Yeah.
to make.
Yeah.
Because the whole goal is what? Quantitative study. Well, what is the measure? How much did we increase this year? What is
Yep.
the increase in our math and our reading goals?
Yep.
Well, what was your measure of how many bilingual or how many multilingual newsletters did you send up? How
Mm.
many times did your teachers contact your families using a language interpretation service?
Mm.
That's something that I'm really working hard here in Manhattan, is saying, we have the resources, we have this, but we also have this language interpretation service that you can call 1-800 number, and then here's your code, and here's what you do, and they're going to have a translator, interpreter there in a minute. Now, how are you going to
Mm.
use it?
I want to name for those who will listen to this that I
Mhm.
personally am even challenged as a school leader by your words, because I have a growing population of multilingual learners in my school. I think about a young man who just warm personality. He spoke Haitian Creole,
Mhm.
and he was just very disconnected from the learning because nothing really served him. Right? He's just there. He's a warm body on a seat that we get tax money for, but what are we really doing for him?
Mhm.
Or I think about uh, some of our not just Hispanic, but like Portuguese population that's growing
Mhm.
where we
That's
are.
interesting.
And what am I doing as a school leader, right? To serve and help them feel a sense of belonging. And then this year, be honest with you, it is in um our annual school plan to
Mhm.
make sure that we're doing those things. And so I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation and to be challenged to be able to serve and do better for our students, because this work truly takes all of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also, like, going back to my studies of community cultural wealth, again, that was
Yes.
framework by Terioso. There's those six capitals, and one is aspirational capital, and that's
Yeah.
something I think as teachers and as you're like yourself and anybody that serves our students, like our students are the ones that have the barriers, and we
Mm,
are responsible for taking away the barriers. They may be real, they may be perceived,
proceed.
they may
Yeah.
be structural, they're institutional, but regardless of those goals, regardless of those barriers, I'm sorry, they still have their goals, they still have their aspirations. That's why they're here. That's why they're
Yeah.
in this country. That's why they go to school every day, because
Yeah.
they want more, and they want to use that linguistic capital that they have. And so how do I look at this student that speaks Haitian Creole, and how do I help motivate him? It's not, oh, they're not motivated. No, how are we not motivating them? It's not about they're not motivated. Their aspirations are there.
Hmm.
It's there, but what are we doing to help discover what those aspirations are and who those children are? So,
Absolutely. So you mentioned Dr. Yosso's work and
mhm,
how um, it has impacted both of us. Your work, your doctoral work, is centered on this community cultural wealth. For those
mhm.
that don't know, can you kind of just give us like, uh, here's the foundation. This is what it is, and this is how it's infused in your work and how you show up.
Mhm. Well, community cultural wealth is a framework that was created um, by Dr. Terioso. Again, um, I'm going to use the bad word, so people say grounded in CRT, grounded in critical race theory. But again, understanding that we're looking at our families with this cultural wealth, with the positive that they come, instead of the canvas or the caveat that they don't come with anything that's respectful. So really, this framework is looking at 6 different capitals, and there's been some other great scholars that have actually created other capitals, like immigration capital or migratory capital. Like
Mhm.
thinking about those different key aspects that make our students who they are, um, and how are we as schools able to strengthen that? So again, they come with capitals. They're not, it's not an obstacle. It's not anything that's negative. It's something that's positive. Now, how do we use what they have to
Mm.
connect to the curriculum? How do we build what we have to connect to the system?
Yeah.
How do we use, for example, familial capital? Familial capital, is defined as the importance of family ties, that immediate or extended. Dr. Terry Watson, if you follow her work, her work is at the foundation of my dissertation as well. She
Mhm.
talks about familial capital is not just kin; it's also kind. Like I have a
Mm.
best friend. Yeah, that's what she coined that word. She coined
Yeah.
that term. Like it's not kin, it's kind. And when she said that, I was like, yeah, that's so true. Because I have families that have come from Nicaragua. They're not related,
Yeah.
but they're a tia and they're a tío to somebody,
Yeah.
because they have that connection. They have this social capital as well, this networking capital that comes with these families, because you know what? We have to use all these things in order to survive.
Mm.
Just because, we have to use our language, we're able to use 2 languages to get through. We're able to use our aspirations to keep pushing us through. Networking capital, for example. Networking capital is the networks that are used. Sorry, let me find it. Sorry, navigational capital. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Navigational capital refers to those skills that are utilized by the community to navigate social institutions.
Yeah.
I mean, health, educational, occupational, government systems. I mean, think about our immigration system. I mean, that's a whole nother language in itself. I mean, I have students that come from Afghanistan that are here because of what happened in Afghanistan. I have 30, 40,
Mhm.
50. The numbers grow of our
Mhm.
Pashto speaking families. And I mean, they have, they're called parolees. I mean, that's the term they use. Yeah. So because they're here, the term is parolees, which I don't like that term,
Mhm.
but a parolee means something else in the criminal justice system.
Yes.
So again, how do we help our families navigate this system? And then think about COVID. I
Mm.
mean, to go get a vaccine. I mean, you have to figure out, okay, is it free here? Is it free there? I mean, how do we help each other? And so that's a power, because we have students also that need a Pell Grant educational system. Okay, I know somebody. I have a cousin. This is your familial capital. I have a cousin or a really good friend that applied for a Pell Grant. Let me go ask them how they did it.
Mhm.
Again, that's a strength, and that's familial
Yes.
capital and navigational capital working together. And that's really something important to talk about, that these capitals are not independent of each other. They're interdependent.
Yes.
They work together. They're not like they're not, you have a social capital, for example. Oh, I
Mhm.
have all these resources. I have Catholic charities, or I have, like, here in Manhattan, there's a recreation center, there's senior centers. That's all social capital. But again, it all builds on each other. So that's really the importance of understanding that, yes, we have families that are in need, maybe monetary wise, but the capital that they have is within their culture of how they connect and how they keep staying together to survive, to build onto that aspirational capital. Hope that all made sense, but
No, it's perfect because what it does is it puts a almost a countercultural understanding of how we arrive at
Mhm.
capital and wealth, right?
Yeah.
Our economy, our capitalistic system only views wealth one way. And if
Mhm.
you and it doesn't even take into account how you
Yeah.
get that wealth. It is why folks like Donald Trump can be respected and regarded regardless of the devastation that he has caused and throughout his presidency and before that as a businessman, as the man who penned the open letter for the exonerated five, wanting them to die, and all of these things. Now he has a mugshot. Think about that dichotomy there, right? But then
Exactly.
you think about that, and in Dr. Yessel's work, asks us not to see people in terms of that dollar sign, but to
Mm-mm.
see the wealth that they already come with, regardless of said
Yeah.
dollar sign. There is, just like you said, a community, a wealth where for us, it is it is tapping into it in such a way that respects and honors who they are as they arrive through our door and doesn't ask them to become something else, doesn't ask them to um,
Mhm.
almost have to assimilate or lose sight of those things. To ask a student to come in with their linguistic capital is
Mhm.
to ask them to show up as they are, to teach us what they know so we can grow. It is bigger because here's the thing I think about. Many of us will say, "Oh, I love all people," and what happens in those situations is we will straight up go to a restaurant and partake in someone's culture because we like the food or the music, but then disrespect the people that are serving you because you
Mhm.
don't necessarily care for the people.
Or disrespect those people that are actually rapping on the radio or with the hip hop or with that dance, or it just drives me
Yes.
insane. We were in New York a few weeks ago, and we went to the Apollo,
Mm,
and my boyfriend said, this is interesting, there are two people working the store at the Apollo. This would have never happened when I lived here. So he had not been in New York for 20 years, 20 some
mhm,
years. And he's like, white people never came into my community,
mhm.
and so he's seeing the gentrification. The
Yep.
reason why I bring this up is because I just think it's to make sure that we understand that things have changed so much in this country. But again, it's the counter narrative that
Yeah.
needs to
Yeah.
speak louder. And they're
Yeah.
coming to the communities, and someday, it's the dollar sign. We have to stop. The dollar sign is sometimes people think is mightier, so that's why we have to get away from those traditional ways of understanding. Dr. Yoso talks about how
Mhm.
those traditional ways of understanding are biased, and they're based on those assumptions because of the lack of understanding of our diverse communities. So if you're
Yes.
going to come into the community, you got to start understanding our diverse community instead of taking away from the diverse community. And this framework challenges how the cultural capital of our diverse communities is understood.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I just want to quickly highlight for those listening that we're going to put in the show notes. We'll highlight Dr. Yosa's work as
mhm,
well. So for your further
exactly.
research and things like that, because
Hmm.
what I think is really important is that when we speak about her work with regard to education,
Hmm.
is that our teachers understand that just like you're saying, right? We are responsible for the culture. So I think about it this way. Um, I think about it as an analogy with the thermostat, right? I don't
Hmm.
get mad at the temperature for being cold in my house.
Hmm.
I go and I change the thermostat because if I change the thermostat, then
Thing
what
change.
I'm experiencing changes.
Hmm.
We are the thermostat. Our
Thank
kids
you.
are the temperature. Our students are the temperature. We don't go there and say, "All right, why are you cold?" No, no, no. I set the temperature. You're just reading back to me what I'm putting out there, what I'm giving, or what I've been neglected to do. And so we should be seeing what our students are giving. And there's outliers. People will say, "Well, what about this?" There's outliers for everything.
Always, yes.
So,
Hmm.
but by and large, our students are an indicator of how we need to step up and what areas we need to step in. And we need to have
Hmm.
humility enough to say and respect enough for where they are, for who they are, for how they show up, and recognize the strengths of all of those things so that it informs our practice as educators.
And that includes uh, including the family in a way, engaging families in the way that they need to be engaged, not
Mm,
our not our idea of family engagement. Because United States family engagement is okay. Look, uh, Senora Romero, Miss Romero did not come and sign. She did not come to Science Fair Day. Therefore, she's not involved. But Miss Romero, she had double shift. And then
right.
she gave you a call to let you know, Maestra, no puedo estar allí porque,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what is, we need to make sure that we understand as schools, what is family engagement? And it's not our definition.
Yeah.
It's the definition of what the families can do, who our families are. They set the tone, like you said.
Yeah.
We are the ones that need to figure out, okay, what is the temperature? How welcoming are we with the families? What is
Yes.
the comfort? What is the comfort that we're giving them to come here? Do we
Hmm.
have bilingual? What does our Facebook page look like? What is when people walk in? How do they feel? Are we
Yeah.
communicating with them?
Mm.
Again, we're not going to have families come to our schools if they're not created, if we're not creating that communication line
Yeah.
for them to come.
I recently saw a school that will remain nameless uh, put out a post, and it was regarding some event that the school was having. And the people that they chose to put in the stock photo looked
Hmm.
nothing like the people that the school serves. And I'm like, what are we communicating by who we center and how we put things out? Like, it was literally like you just picked the picture that you thought, the picture that looked like you versus the picture that looked like the people we serve.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
wonder about those things, right? Like, I wonder about, for example, to your point about family engagement, what we do with Hispanic Heritage Month, for example, where it's not let's just have some food and decorate a door. But what are we doing to really honor the culture? What are we doing to honor the families? How have we asked them? Have we said, what could we do?
Hmm.
Right? Have we centered them? And so this brings you to a question that I really want to ask you.
Sure.
In your work and in the work that you're even presently doing at your school, what are some things that we as educators need to be asking ourselves to ensure, right, that moments like that aren't lost, that we are actually connecting with our families in a rich way?
We have to stop looking through a monocultural lens. We have to
Mm,
stop looking through that limited scope.
hmm.
We need to educate ourselves and help our teachers educate them in that get away from that deficit perspective
Yeah.
of our diverse families. If we don't, as educators, if we're not something I would talk to a lot of the educators I talked with, and even my students, I would say, you learn in your discomfort zone. Decide to feel uncomfortable, you're not going to learn about your families. Until you decide to use that language interpretation service that you're nervous about and it never works, which
Hmm.
is not true because it works, because I call all the time and they even leave messages. You know what I mean? Until you're able to say, okay, I'm going to call this language interpretation service and do use a translator, until you go and even use Google Translate and download talking points, for example, or download, or even if you use Google Translate, it's okay. Just send the message.
Yeah.
Until you want to communicate with our families and learn who they are
Yeah.
and have that critical reflection of your teaching, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
not. We will little by little. But again, we need to erase the okay, like you said, what are the funds of knowledge of our families? Like you said, well, what do you want to do? Well, funds of knowledge by Dr. Luis Moller, it's very important to think about. Okay, what do they do? What are their religious? What do we do for religion? For example, I'll give you something that we do that is really brings comfort to my heart.
Mm,
Is that we have a large Afghan families. Well, we are trying to find ways to make sure that they have a prayer space because they are predominantly they follow Islam. You know,
yeah.
they have their prayer time. So that was important to them. Well, that should be important to us.
Yeah.
Um, we have to also think about, for example, the Afghan flag. We're trying to get the Afghan flag in our schools because it's not in our schools right now. We're trying to get it hung in our schools.
Mm,
Little things that we to have our school say, "We see you.
yeah.
We see you."
Mm,
Not not, oh, you're here, you occupy Title III funds, thank you for coming. You occupy Title I funds, free and reduced lunch, thank you for coming. You
mhm,
occupy McKinney-Vento funds, thank you for coming. No, we have
mm,
to be, why do we need you? Why is our graduation important? Because you graduate, not because our rate's important, because you're
mhm.
graduating with this education. So
Yeah.
again, maybe that was a mouthful, but I just get really worked up, as you can tell.
No, that's good.
Like I
You're talking
said,
good.
until we know who our families are, until
Yeah.
we are able to say, you know, who they are, what they do, we're going to continue to have this deficit cycle of family engagement. Not because of us, I'm sorry, not because of them, because of us, because we're perpetuating the deficit cycle of family engagement. You
mm,
know,
mm.
if we have this monocultural lens, we have this deficit perspectives based on our assumptions and biases, then we're not valuing the languages and the cultures. Therefore, we don't have the participation of our families.
Yep.
Therefore, our monocultural lens continues, it perpetuates.
Mm, 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 mm.
So yeah, I've been working on this idea of deficit cycle, but again, not their deficit, it's our deficit.
Our
It's what
deficit.
we're doing. It's
Yeah.
our deficit perspective that continues to perpetuate the cycle of lack of engagement, not because of the families, but because of the institution.
I think about it this way, and I've said it before, and I've used it with regard to um, oppression, racism, and things like that. But I think it works here as well. Anytime that you're talking about the way that power or the way that privilege flows or things like that, I always think about going to the airport and you stand on that conveyor belt, right?
Hmm.
And it moves you forward, right? As you stand on that belt, you have to do nothing in order to progress. Literally, you just stand. It moves you. In order for us to then change how things are presently moving, not only do we have to turn around, but we got to
Hmm.
walk in the opposite direction. Not only do you have to walk in the opposite direction, but you got to walk faster than the conveyor belt is pushing you in said direction. And so I think about it this way: if our conveyor belts are moving along a line of monocultural understandings, if our conveyor belts are moving along the lines of how we show up for our students that says that you're not necessarily seen or welcomed here, then one, we have to turn around. That's the recognition that the conveyor belt is moving. But two, we have to move in the opposite direction in a faster pace. That means we need to be owning, taking personally the sense
Hmm.
of belonging, the sense of understanding those funds of knowledge, and taking accurate data with regard to
Thank
that,
you.
that qualitative data that says something to us, right? Because we focus so much on the quantitative.
Oh yeah, we
And I
know.
think
We
that there's a
respond.
oh, right, but who they are and how they feel and what they and the sources of knowledge that they will give us in the qualitative will inform the quantitative data that we're seeking. And I
And
think
it's
we have it so
restorative in
bad.
nature.
Please say it again.
I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt you. I said
No,
it's restorative in nature.
yes.
Like, I mean, we talk about restorative justice.
Yeah.
Restorative is getting to know who our students are and understanding and fostering the community cultural knowledge that they have. It's really easy. It's restorative justice. I mean, yes, I know your work is very strong, but that's what you do. Like, you talk about those basic things, and that's what how basic restorative justice can be. Is let's foster community cultural wealth. Terioso, that's where work was based on incoming freshmen, and that's where she saw that's the foundation of her work was trying to help colleges and universities understand who their diverse students are.
Yeah.
But we can easily, again, go back to put this in K through 12 education and say, look, let's foster community cultural wealth, because you know what? That's the most restorative justice we can do, because you know what? We're getting to the root of who our students are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love that. Um, for listeners who are going to pop in on this and be challenged, and they say, "Man, listen, my mind's blown. I need to do some more work." What reading could they do? What could they tap into to really help refine their knowledge?
When I was working at K State, we did biography driven instruction. Where we started with a lot of our teachers is, in order for us to be able to begin the work and go along with the conveyor belt in the way which we should go,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to look at our own assumptions and biases. Where do they come
Hmm.
from?
Hmm.
Why? Why are they there? Why are they still there? Until we don't do that inner work and that critical reflection, we won't be able to move forward. Um, but once we move forward, I think that that's something that we need to look at. They have this really cool, I if you can share my information, I can send out this survey that I've done with teachers about their own biases and assumptions, and it really goes deep into it. They don't have to share it with anybody, but it really helps that inner work
Yes.
um, to find out where does it come from.
Mm.
Where do our assumptions come from? I mean, I think that's important too. And then as we move forward, I think it's looking at the work of Dr. Terioso
Hmm.
and Dr. Terry Watson.
Hmm.
She's doing some amazing work too, about our Black women, our Black girls, and about, how do we respect, again, going back to the word of respect, how do we respect our Black girls? I bring that up because she was so foundational in my work for my dissertation.
Yeah.
But again, looking into community cultural wealth, looking at, going into Funds of Knowledge by Dr. Louis Moll. Again, and I think it's also, how do we create the culture in our classroom? What is your thermostat? What are you doing? What is the culture of your classroom? What is the belonging like? Do how do we make Black History Month? How do we make Hispanic Heritage Month? How do we make understanding of Ramadan part of who we are? It takes it all year long. How do we create that sense of belonging?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, I think it goes back to our assumptions and biases. Who do we serve? Making sure that we're communicating with them in a way that is understanding of who they are, and engaging our families in ways that works for them, not works for us. Um, Taking the time to learn our community, and building the culture of inclusivity and belonging in our schools, in our classroom, or our classroom in our schools. And how do we be the voice for our students? Because we're not only just their teacher, their educator, but we're also part of who they are, and how do we build their voice as well.
I love it. I thank you. Like, truly thank you for this time. Like,
Yeah, thank you for giving me the time.
this is, I hope our educators are hearing this. I'm deeply challenged and inspired to go harder in this work. So thank you so much for this. For folks that may not um, have been encountered your genius and what you bring to the table and all the things that you do, how can they connect with you and support you?
I am on LinkedIn, Dr. Latania Marr y Ortega. I'm also on Instagram. You could always email me, Dr. Latania Marr y Ortega at gmail.com. If you could share that. I
Absolutely.
am free to open, I would love to work with schools. I'd love to work with teachers. Um, I'm I'm really I really want to help that idea of cultural liberation, linguistic liberation, and how do we help build and break down that deficit cycle that
Yeah.
our institutions have created. Again, it's not our families. It's our families want to be there. That's why they're here. Now, how do
Right.
we build the community? How do we engage? And how do we build a school community how do we build school communities that are created and that are foundational in community cultural wealth of the students that we serve and the families we serve?
Listen, community, I hope that you are taking in what Dr. Marr y Ortega has been saying to us. I hope that it is challenging us, like it's challenging me. Listen, let's do this work, that inner work of healing, that inner work of understanding, that inner work of arriving with um, understanding that our kids are bringing so much, our families are bringing so much to the table if we would only tap into it, if we would only plug into the power source. So thank you so much for encouraging us. And till next time, community, let's keep pushing.
Thank you.